Hello.
Hey, Rabbi.
How we doing?
Good. See, at least at this drasha, I could take notes.
Okay.
On Shabbos, I can't do that.
We'll see how many folks actually join us. Just tell me if I want, I can mute all and unmute all. See them over here. Okay. The one thing I can't do for some reason, I can't arrange to record to the cloud. I haven't seen how to do that.
It looks like you are recording. Oh, I don't know.
I can record, but it doesn't say where I can record to. And not the usual way in which I get to share Torah with you on Shabbat HaGadol. I'll start by recognizing that I guess for all the years that I've spoken on Shabbat HaGadol that I can remember, I would do that at my grandfather's shtender, which stood in the shul. Right now, that's in Temple Israel in the storage. And instead, I get to give a shiur from my office. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Just wave. Can you hear me? Okay. Now, for now, I'm going to put you on mute. And then if I want to ask any questions, I'll switch you over. Okay. Okay. So that's not our opportunity now, but we get to do so from my study at home and into your homes as well. So we'll do that together. And I've entitled the shiur tonight. Hold on, let me see if I can just do the share here. I've entitled the shiur "Closed and Open Doors on Pesach Night." And some of this was material that a bunch of years ago we studied in a different way. And so I took a few pieces of that and I've shifted a little bit. And the goal I want us to have us think about is what happens on Pesach night when we stand at our doorways the second half of the Seder after we finish eating. And I guess as we reach towards the end of the shiur tonight, I quickly drafted in English a little tefillah and encourage you to think of saying something like this for this year. As we think about what it means to have our doors closed and open too, even for those few brief moments. So let's begin. All right. So I'm going to do some of the reading. I hope that it doesn't make you too passive, everyone, but I think it'd just be easier if I do it this way. This is the Mishnah in Brachot, and it reads as follows: Mazgu lo kos shlishi, mevarech al mezono. They would pour the leader of the Seder, but every person as well, a third cup, and mevarech al mezono. He would then go ahead and say the bracha on the food that you just ate, birchat hamazon. Revi'i, they would pour the fourth cup, gomer alav et hahalel. Then you would finish off the halal with that cup. Well, omer alav birchat hashir, you'd also say birchat hashir. We're not sure exactly what that means. And bein hakos alalo, the halacha here is that if between these cups, you can drink between the third and the fourth, the second and the third, but not the third and the fourth. Not our topic for right now. But the Mishnah is pretty clear. What you do is you have the order of the Seder as we know it, right? What is the order of the Seder as we know it? We'll take a look at our usual text. Now I can just find it here, right? This is the order of the Seder as we know it. Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz. Those are the things that we start off with, the kiddush and washing your hands and eating green vegetables, and then breaking the middle matzah, magid rachza motzi matzah, telling the story, washing your hands, eating the matzah, maror korech, the bitter herbs, and the sandwich, shulchan ohorech, eating the meal, tzafun barech. That's where we found ourselves in the Mishnah. After you eat the afikomen barech, you say the benching, Hallel nirtza. Then you say Hallel and then nirtza. So this is where I want us to begin with what happens in the Seder. Here. We finished saying the Birchat Hamazon, as we're told. This is actually poorly done in Safari. As far as very good, but this is not Barech. Barech is actually the Birchat Hamazon, as the Mishnah says. So the third cup is not Barech. It's the benching itself, which is Barech, that concludes with the Kiddush, and then you drink it. And then says the Mishnah, I'm actually going to do one thing here. I'm going to actually do one thing. Hold on, because I don't need to do this. We're all a very mature group, and I'm actually going to have us, if I can I get there? Hold on. I'm going to unmute us so people can comment as you would like, or if you can mute yourselves. Hold on a second. I can't do that if I do this. Sorry. I've unmuted you, and you can mute yourselves, but I really would like anybody to comment as we do the learning together. So what happens now in the Seder is we said Barech, and we should go right to Hallel. But in here we have what we know is sneaked in is this. Mozgin koshel Eliyahu potum metadalet. We pour the cup of Elijah and we open the door. And then we recite these words, pour out your wrath upon the nations who did not know you, and on the nations and who did not call on your name. They try to consume Jacob and laid waste to all the places we lived. Again, pour out your wrath upon them. God should chase after them and eradicate them from under the heavens. So I'm not so interested right now. We'll do a little reference to Shvoch HaMatcha, but this whole insertion just seems to be out of things. It doesn't belong here. Why is there an insertion here? We were told Barech, Hallel. Here's Hallel. So where did this come from? That's what I want us to be thinking about. Not just asking questions on the Mishnah, but what be the value that is conveyed here.
All right.
So,
Bye.
Daniel, I'm going to put you on mute. Okay. I have a lot of power. I can mute somebody individually if I wanted to. Susan, be careful, Susan, with the laugh. Okay, no, I'm joking. So that's where I want us to pick us up again in the next back in our text. Okay, is everybody with me? We're going to look at the text to ask the question of what the value that's being conveyed here in all of this. Good. So as we do it, what are your suggestions? Can anybody offer reasons why we might open the door at this point in the Seder? What you got? Oh, that's a question with the faces in front of us. Why might we open the door now? Okay, it's not as easy as I thought it would be. I'm so accustomed to being able to point around the room and telling and calling on Dean to read whenever I needed a reader. All right, I'll jump in. Okay, so all right, so we got to figure this out. So what doors have been open and closed historically at the Seder? Let's start with the first Seder. Right?
It's recording. Okay.
The very first Seder.
Rabbi.
I was going to go a different direction. Maybe I'm being too poetic, Zarek.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if it's a bracketing to a halach ma'anya, where halach ma'anya opens up the Seder. We're basically saying, anyone who's needy, anyone who's hungry, come and join us. I'm wondering if there's some connection there.
Okay, good. Let's keep that. That's a very good reflection. I'm thinking about the fact that we're kind of starting the Seder again, part 2 now, and maybe we're sort of like there was an intermission that happened, and we kind of get back to a theme from the beginning. So I want you to hold on to that, because we're going to see a Gaonic teaching that's going to take us in that direction. What other thoughts do we have? Who else has an idea? Jason, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. I'll unmute you. Go ahead, Jason. No, Jason, you have to unmute yourself. Go ahead. We got you.
The only idea that I can think about as far as that would go would be either that basically hoping to pass in the poor, the idea of
Jason, speak into the microphone, because I think you're saying something powerful. Go ahead.
basically the idea of slavery and inviting in the poor might be part of it at least.
Okay, to think about the slavery component. All right, and the freedom from slavery component. Okay, good. Any other thoughts as as we start off on the outset here? Anybody? Okay, well, let's take a look at some material and let's see how this develops for us. All right, so let's go back to our text. And by the way, thank you all, because I could have imagined that there would be 3 people here tonight. So having 33 people is beautiful. Okay, I actually want to start with the first stater. Let's read these texts here. The Torah describes in Mitzrayim. Supposed to take that hyssop branch and dip it in the blood and put it on the doorpost. Ve'atem lo teitzu. Here we are. Ve'atem lo teitzu ish mipetach beito ad boker. As for you, right? No one should leave their doors through their portals of their house until morning. Why? What's happening? God's going to pass through to smite the Egyptians. They'll see the blood on the doorpost and the lint on the doorpost, and he'll pass over your entry. No. And God will not allow the mashchit, the destroyer, to come into your houses to smite you. Now, what do we point out? What do we know about what the Torah insists over and over again? What the Haggadah insists over and over again? Who smote the Egyptians? Who smote the Egyptians? Right. God insists over and over again, and as the Haggadah says it is I, not an angel of any kind, not a messenger. God is smiting Egypt. And yet, there's a separate reflection and an understanding that there's a mashchit, a destroyer, which is out and about. I actually made reference to this a few weeks ago in the Shabbat Drasha that I gave. There is a mashchit, which is separate from what God is doing, and partially, we're being told that as Mefarshim read this, Jews should not get foolish enough to step outside at night when dangers lurk at night, and to think that they'll be safe. And maybe it's also sort of God's henchmen who are leading the way, pushing everyone out of the way. That's going to be a danger. But what God does guarantee is that if we stay inside, then the mashchit will not come in. That's what he tells us would happen on Pesach night. And then the Torah says, and you should observe this matter as a statute for you and your descendants evermore. So yeah. So when you read it that way, so you would think this verse would have you think what about this whole ritual of the night? Every Pesach, what should we do? On Friday, Erev Pesach in the afternoon, and we finish cleaning up, we should get a bucket, and what should we do?
Blood on the doorposts.
Put blood on a hyssop branch or on a brush and paint our doorposts every year. So says the Ramban, don't be fooled. That's not true. Regarding this pasuk, Hu Devar HaPesach Atzmo. This is referring to all the rules of the Karban Pesach. Shamar Lamala in the earlier psukim. V'shachatu HaPesach, about slaughtering it. V'imhu Rachok Lomat. All right, and then even if it's far away from where this pasuk is, V'lomat Tanadamim HaSamuchlo. It's not talking about this whole bit about putting the blood on the doorpost. It was only that first Pesach when Jews were told they had to do that. All of our Pesachs, we do not do that. It's much nicer. People would think us strange if they came by a Jewish homes and there were nice, there was big blood-stained doorposts. It would not be good for us. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, actually. We're worried what other people would think. So no blood on the doorposts. But I'm wondering whether or not there was some sense and some relationship to the inside-outside factor on Pesach night, even for all generations, an awareness that, you know what, there's mashchit outside, and there's danger outside, and I'm inside. And so I stay inside. I don't go out. The Torah says ad boker. We'll see whether it needs to be ad boker or not. Okay. Let's take a look at then what dangers might lurk. Okay. So anybody here? You can see on the right hand side. Anybody read? I'll open it up. Anybody read from Josephus?
Josephus.
So see, I'll highlight it right here. It's highlighted now.
I'll read.
Okay. Okay, whoever said I'll read, go ahead.
When therefore those gates were first opened, some of the Samaritans came privately into Jerusalem and threw about dead men's bodies in the cloisters, on which account the Jews afterwards excluded them out of the temple, which they had not used to do at such festivals. And on other account also, they watched the temple more carefully than they had formerly done. So
Josephus is describing something, and here's our problem. I don't know what a cloisters is. This is I think an early 20th century translation of Josephus from the Greek. So I don't know how this fits in with anything we might know of. But we're told that what did the Shomronim do according to Josephus? What do they do?
They made the temple unclean.
Yeah, so if the cloisters are in the Beis HaMikdash itself, which I'm guessing it was in some way, so they came in and they defiled the Beis HaMikdash, right? There were these, so they sort of made their way in and made it terrible for us. And because of that, as Josephus presents it here, we stopped being very good. We used to allow the Shomronim, the Samaritans, who were this complicated relationship with who they are. We're not going to analyze that right now, and they were no longer allowed into the Beis HaMikdash because they did a terrible thing. They defiled the Beis HaMikdash on Pesach night. So that's what's laid out here. Now I'll point this out. You know, we have laws in this country about the Good Samaritan laws, right? Based on Christian Bible references to the Good Samaritan who was there to help when others would not help. We should understand that, at least in our tradition, that there was a good Samaritan, but otherwise we did not really have very positive feelings about the Samaritan. Okay, so that's what you should understand. So there is a an early ancient antiquity period in the first century about Pesach night, when enemy forces, people who were out to make things bad for us, try to harm us. In this case, with dead bodies, and we should not think that that stopped, because we know from medieval times it did not go away at all. Here I have an article from I don't really know anything much about him, but he's a professor of church history at Seminary of the Southwest. In an article in conversation.com. And Daniel Jocelyn Siemczewski writes, Good Friday and Medieval Jews. It's the middle of the article. This language about Jews in the medieval Good Friday liturgy often was a really harsh language, often carried over into physical violence toward local Jewish communities. It was common for Jewish houses to be attacked with stones. Often these attacks were led by the clergy. David Nuremberg, a scholar of medieval Jewish Christian relations, argues that this violence reenacted the violence of Jesus' suffering and death. Another scholar of history argues that the attack on the Jewish community was meant to be a revenge for the death of Jesus and a ritual act that reinforced the boundary between Jews and Christians. Local clergy who encouraged and participated in the violence against Jews were in violation of the rules of their own church. Church laws sought to protect Jews and required them to stay inside on Good Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And it is also the case, I went looking for this actually early today, because I remember having read about that. There was such similar rules that were in place on Easter itself, that Jews were actually required by statute to remain indoors. So the idea of us being holed up on Pesach within closed doors is not something that is new. It goes back to that period, and often because again people were trying to cause us harm. Civil authorities protected Jews by setting up armed guards and not permitting Christians under 16 to throw stones. Not permitting Christians under 16 years to throw stones. And always prevent bloodshed and violence. So we're well aware of this. So that we know of, but this we know more about, right? And that is the blood libels that were cast about Jews. Anybody just tell me what you know about the blood libels? Anybody pipe in?
Yeah.
Blood libels were any time a child sort of died mysteriously, or there was they would accuse the Jews of kidnapping and murdering the babies. And in particular, they would accuse the Jews of using the blood of Christian babies in order to make matzah.
Right, matzah, so ritual slaughter of Christian children, sometimes infants, to use it for matzah baking, and also for wine, And so, look, we know we have a preference to use red wine at the Seder. I realize I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at your pictures on the side here. But we know that there was we have a preference to use red wine to remind us of dam, makat dam. And we know that we also have at least some approaches which have us try to think sensitivity about the perishing of Egyptians and the plagues that they experienced. There were periods of time when the Jewish community purposely did not use red wine at the Seder because they were fearful of the accusations that their wine was made with the blood of Jewish children. So they went for white wine to avoid that possibility. Can you imagine? And so what would happen is that often on an Erev Pesach, there would be, again, I don't know whether Christians would actually murder a child and frame the Jews, or if it was just an unfortunate passing and they said, let's use this opportunity. But on an Erev Pesach, that a Jew might fear that there would be a framing and then a pogrom that would follow was not uncommon. And so Jews would hold up in their houses out of fear about what might be on their what be going on outside. And so what do we know then? When we open that door, at this point in the Seder, we are partially there to double check that there's not something horrible waiting for us on the other side of things. So that's a pretty awful reflection. Go ahead, Aaron, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just thinking like it's checking to see if nothing bad's going out. Also, maybe it's a sign of faith to say we're not just like holed up in our homes hiding. We're in our homes because we have a family ritual. We have a family close religious ritual that's going on here. But we also have faith in God that we are protected, and that's maybe why Eliyahu Navi comes at that time.
Good. So let's actually spend a little time on that. So I would suggest, and I think we've spoken about this in one context in the past. The Shvol Chamascha is there that we tell God to bitterly to pour out His wrath against all those the goyim who would do terrible things to us because of what was especially commonplace in medieval Europe around this period, whether it was the blood libel or all of the ritual performances in certain communities, especially in Ashkenaz, which sought to whoop up terrible feelings towards the Jews. So in a moment of bitterness, we say Shvol Chamascha. But yet we have Eliyahu there too. So let's talk about what it means to be thinking about our faith and protection, sense of protection on this night. Okay, let's read this text here. Who would like to read for us, please? The quote from Shemot 12:41-42. Different volunteer.
Dina, I'll read.
Okay.
It's where you're highlighted.
I highlighted, yes.
I got it. It's a night of watching / protecting to God to bring them forth from the land of Egypt. That is this night, watchings, for all of the children of Israel throughout their generations.
The Leil Shimurim is what the Torah uses. This is a Leil Shimurim, a night of watchings. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra, Leil Shimurim, right? Laila Hamushumar Uva Min Hamazikin. It's a night in which there's protection from all dangerous forces. At Pesach night, somebody's got some noise in the background. Would you mind just quieting it down behind, okay?
Maybe mute all.
Just mute all.
Okay, I can do that. I'd rather not, because people are...
Once you do that, we can unmute ourselves.
You can unmute yourself. I hope I can do that. Okay.
Then we default to mute.
Okay, yes. I'm out. People. Oh, there we go. You can unmute yourselves. Perfect. I didn't say the extra air though. Okay. Let's go back up. So the sense of dread, on the one hand, that the Jew would feel on Pesach night, real dread, whether it's from the Samaritans in antiquity or all that was being, churned up in medieval Europe especially, is balanced off, and a counterforce is a sense of faith. That's the faith of Leil Shimurim, that the Gemara says we should understand. It is a night where we're protected from all mazikim. Now, mazikim is an interesting term. We'll see. We'll get that. We'll get that in a second. Yes, let's take a look at that. At how the community in worms, they related to some of this. Somebody want to read for us? This is taken from the book of customs of notes of the community of worms. We open the door. Anybody? Who's volunteering?
Aaron Steinberg.
Okay.
We open the door and declare, Eliyahu and the Mashiach, come in, because the Mazikim, the harmful forces, flee from a place where people pronounce the name of Eliyahu. And for this reason, there is the practice in a small number of places to illustrate the Mashiach and Eliyahu for the sake of the young children. When they see the image, they will recall out loud the name Eliyahu, and the harmful forces will flee.
So this taken from, again, 600, 700 years ago, whenever this exactly was written down, but the ancient custom of the Jews of worms was to introduce Eliyahu as a way to keep the mazikim away, right? The mazikim, which we do fear, whether it's the mashchit in the abstract, or the mazikim, which if you were a medieval human being, you feared these forces, so that you might develop a custom of throwing salt over your shoulder, sweeping backwards out your door. Anybody have parents who have such customs, or grandparents who had such customs? Yes.
So my grandmother, when I was little, she used to come in dressed as a sheet, saying, "I'm Eliyahu."
Yeah, that's also right. Yes. Well, we're going to get to one of those in a few minutes.
Right.
But how many of you go poo 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 or toot toot toot?
I do.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that goes back at some point hundreds of years ago as a way to keep away the Malach HaMaves, the demons, the mashchis, and medieval Jews really joined with their comrades and the non-Jewish comrades in fearing such things. And they saw, though, that Eliyahu, they had this tradition, the belief that Eliyahu was if you just bring up Eliyahu, the demons flee. I don't know how that got established. And so they describe that they would illustrate their Haggadahs with little pictures of Mashiach and Eliyahu, just so the youngsters, according to this, would actually say, "Oh, look, there's Eliyahu," and say Eliyahu, and the demons would flee. I can't imagine that maybe they have them all around their house all the time, but that's interesting that this was such a custom. And in this sense, then the role of Eliyahu in all of this is, as we are sort of opening the door, we're taking a dangerous move. Until now, the door is closed, just like in Mitzrayim, keeping that mashchit out. And we take a dangerous step and open the door to experience the outside, but we're so frightened about what could be happening. We have to call upon Eliyahu just to help keep whatever forces there are out there, whether were the actual evil, bad folks around that were laying traps for the Jews or other types of mazikim. Eliyahu would be there to help push them away. So that's like a whole path of reading this. But I don't know if that's the only path of reading this. And I want us to take a look at actually the earlier part of that text from Josephus. So let's see what we have there. Anybody want to read the first paragraph that I now highlight, the earlier piece, section 29, as Coponius? Another volunteer, somebody new. Especially when I have everyone in front of me. Chat. Let's look at chat. Hold on.
I'll do it. If you want.
Rena. Adina Steinberg has voted on Rena. Okay, Rena.
Let's hope I can see it. As Coponius. Oh gosh. Now I've got. Okay. Move your.
I'm going to move that cursor right now. There we go.
Thank you. As Coponius was exercising his office of procurator and governing Judea, the following accidents happened. As the Jews were celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which we call the Passover, it was customary for the priests to open the temple gates just after midnight.
So now he goes on to then talk about what the Samaritans did when they opened the gates. But I'm finding it more interesting, right, to read that there was a practice. What was the practice? Just after Chatzot Halayla, the Kohanim would open the gates of the Beit HaMikdash. That's fascinating, right? That such a practice would take place. I don't know exactly what the gates were like, which side had gates. I'm trying to think about what I know of the Temple Mount as it exists now, but there were gates. We certainly know there were eastern gates. The Mashiach was supposed to come through the eastern gate. And they often describe the sun at sunrise, the sunlight coming through that eastern gate right into the base of Mikdash, and that's when they would say Barakai. So I wonder whether it was actually the eastern gate that we're describing here, but they would open it up at that point of the night, at Chatzot Halayla. Okay, let's think about that. Firstly, just to think about when we open our doors. Right? At what point do we open our doors? When is it? After Barech, before Hallel. So we have a halacha. The last thing that I ate was the afikomen, right? What's the halacha? Anybody share with me that the halacha, some halachas you know about afikomen eating?
You can't eat anything afterwards?
You can't eat anything after the afikomen, right? Firstly, the afikomen is there to replace what?
The Korban Pesach.
The Korban Pesach, okay? Now, the Korban Pesach had to be consumed by Chatzot Halayla, by midnight. So we have, let's presume you have our Seder going, you stop, and you make sure you finish eating your Korban Pesach or your replacement, the matzah, the afikomen around midnight time. And then we bench, and then the Kohanim of our homes, go and open up our gates, just as the Kohanim did in the Beis HaMikdash. That could be where this custom harkens back to as well. We can think about the first Pesach, as we started off, the first Pesach in Mitzrayim, when the doors were closed, we knew, of course, at morning light, they would open those doors and they would head off into freedom. Or we could think of ourselves in the Beis HaMikdash, where they were already in Geula, right, in redemption, and they would do this every Pesach night. Now, I want you to think about how the Seder splits. And the first half of the Seder is a focus on Mitzrayim and the redemption from Egypt. And we conclude that with the bracha asher ga'alanu v'ga'alta v'otenu Mitzrayim, right? That God redeemed us and redeemed our ancestors from Egypt. And then we say, yes, God, please redeem us as well. And with that, we pause. and we sit down and we start eating, and we start eating the mitzvot of the night, the matzah and the maror and our meal and our afikomen, and then we pick things up again. The last part of the Seder, that latter Hallel, is a different Hallel than the first Hallel. The first Hallel is referred to as Hallel Mitzrayim. Hallel Mitzrayim, B'tzeit Yitzam Mitzrayim. And we sing the song of the Jew redeemed from Egypt, as if we were marching forth with them. But then we get ourselves back into a real place, which is our space right now, where we're sitting and having our Seder, and we're eating crumbling matzah instead of the carbon Pesach. And so we know we're not living in redeemed time. And so we turn it to a prayer of redemption, which is the latter part of the Seder. And we allow ourselves to imagine that the Mashiach is coming. That Mashiach has come. Eliyahu, we say, Eliyahu, come. And Mashiach, you are here. And now let's sing the glorious Hallel of the redemption. That's the latter half of the Seder. Take a look, if you would. What's described? This is described from Rabbi Nissen Gaon, okay, quoted in the Sefer HaRokeach. Let's highlight this. Who wants to read for us this quotation? Let me move it up to the top here. I found the Megillat Starim. Anybody?
We can actually.
This is Shira. Sure, I'll read.
Shira, sure. Go ahead. Thank you.
I'll even turn my video on for the occasion.
Okay.
All right. I found in Megillat Starim that Abba, Rav Nisim Gaon, would not close the doors of the house in which we were dwelling at all on Pesach night. From those times until now, that has been our custom, and the doors of the house are open. And when Eliyahu comes, we will go forth to greet him speedily with no hindrance. And we say that in Nisan they shall, in the future.
I'm sorry about that. Right, they are destined in the future to be redeemed.
Okay.
Right? That's a little bad translation part, right? So Rav Nissen Gaon, right, would firstly had a practice not to close his doors of this house at Seder night. The doors were wide open the whole time. And he would think about and imagine that when Eliyahu comes, we can be ready to go greet him because this is the time full of redemptive energy. And so we know the role of Eliyahu is, as the quote was we told here, the herald of the Mashiach. Here, let's see this quote here from Rabbi Yosef Yuspa Khan in the Sefer Ometz in 1637. Anybody want to after drinking? Anybody want to see that text? After drinking?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
After drinking, as it is customary, from the cup of blessing, the third cup on Birkat HaMazon, he grasped the fourth cup of wine and opened the door. The moment that the door is opened, he recites Shvoch. When the recitation of Shvoch begins, someone comes, literally falls.
Here you go, top next
into the doorway, in order to demonstrate on the night of our first redemption our strong faith in our final redemption. This custom performed in memory of the Messiah is good and pleasing.
So,
in memory of the Messiah?
What?
In memory of the Messiah?
Remembrance of the Messiah. As a remembrance of, yes, correct, not a past tense memory, yes. In remembrance of our faith in the Mashiach. So somebody there mentioned that you knew that you had people a grandmother who would put on a white something and come in as if you were Eliyahu. Anybody else have such things happened in your home? Yeah, I see a few hands. The problem is I only have, yes. So grandparents, great-grandparents, stories that you remember from childhood that people would dress up as Eliyahu, and then usually it's a little shtick for the children. When you said Eliyahu, they would come running in and either scaring everybody or get a good laugh. But we're told here it wasn't the case. It wasn't just for laughs. It wasn't for a joke. It wasn't for for a shtick. They would as a matter of spiritual practice say, we want to believe the Mashiach is here. We want to feel the redemptive power of this night. And so the door was open and Eliyahu's there, and the Mashiach is present. So all that's I think is module number 2. Module number 1 has our doors closed the Seder night because of all the dangers that are out there, and our fear about what's going on there, and we just sort of open the door out of trepidation about what might be on the doorstep afterwards, and we do it with bitterness and say Shvol Chamascha, and we just say, oh, Eliyahu Hanavi, if only you could come and get us out of this horrible world in which we live. The second sees as an energy in this night, at this point in the Seder, which is about redemption. We feel redemption deeply. It's not about what we fear is on the other side, but we're hoping when we open the door, we hope to find on the other. We hope to find on the other side. We hope to find Mashiach. We hope to find the redemptive light, there before us. Shvol Chamascha, yes, because that's what's going to happen against all the bad guys in the Mashiach time. So we say that, but it's more about Eliyahu and the Mashiach than about Shvol Chamascha. The first would have us think that the driving energy is Shvol Chamascha, pour out your wrath. The second one is more the energy is around Eliyahu and Navi. Go ahead.
The timing of this whole thing, the right after midnight, and the opening up of the gates of the temple, it's coinciding with the time of the Mashchit destroying our enemies, and so it seems like maybe the connection to Eliyahu Hanavi might have been a later, less vengeful approach. But is it not possible that when the Kohanim were opening up the gates, they were hoping to unleash the Mashchit as the Mashchit had been unleashed years before? Wow,
I didn't think of it that way. I actually was, if you remember, there is a play in the Torah where Moshe warns Paro and he says, "Kachatzot halayla," around midnight God will come. And then when the Torah tells us what happens, God says at chatzot halayla, and when it's described what happens, it happens at chatzot, right? At chatzot, at midnight. So midnight comes, in a flash. There is the punishment of Mitzrayim, and then a minute after midnight, there is redemption. We don't leave until morning for whatever reason, right? But it's not an all-night thing that's going on. Kumutzi mitoch ami. A few minutes later, that's when power comes running out, because it takes a moment for the smiting of the Egyptians, and then that's over. So after midnight, they open. I would have said is still is not driving from that energy. Okay, let me go back to what Eric started us off with, and I want you to read this piece from Rav Matityahu Gaon, 9th century in Bavel. Who wants? Eric, you want to read that for us since you mentioned something like this? Eric, you want to unmute and do that for us?
You're assuming that I can actually read that.
Those
of us of a certain age can't see text that small.
Eric, if you go to the top of the screen and click View Options, you can magnify the text. 50%, 200%, whatever you like.
Wow.
Yes.
Should I read it?
I'll tell you what, I'll artificially do it right now.
I can read it.
Yeah, Rox.
Good.
That they have the custom to declare all who are needy, let them come and eat. This was the ancestral tradition. They would lift their tables and they would not close their doors. And they would say this so that the Jewish poor, their neighbors, would come and eat. And now our neighbors are more generally Gentiles than Jewish. We provide food for them in advance so they wouldn't need to go asking door to door.
Oh.
Is that it?
So what does he describe? What does he describe was the original practice?
Having people were going door to door for food.
That is true, but what did every Jew make sure to do at the beginning of their Seder?
Lift their tables.
They would lift their tables. I don't understand it exactly, but more importantly, they would say "Kol dichvin yetei v'yechol."
Right.
Now, I'll tell you what was important. What is ridiculous about what we do? When do we say "Kol dichvin yetei v'yechol"? Everyone who's needy, come and let them eat with me. When do we say that?
Well, we're already sitting at the table.
We're sitting at the table, all right. And what is not open?
The door.
Our door is closed.
And all we're eating is
all
parsley.
our nice little group that's at the table, and we say, anybody who wants to eat, come and eat. And who can hear us? Only the people who are in the room. The people that are outside can't hear a thing. It's not possible. So we have at least this teaching from Ramat Yitziyahu Gaon that says, right, initially it wasn't that way. The door was wide open, and we'd say, anybody come in, and the Aniyim who are out there would hear the invite, and they'd come into our homes. But because and we don't live in Teaneck, right, it stopped making sense. I'll tell you my reference. It was actually a really beautiful email that went out a few weeks ago from the rabbis in Teaneck that said, like the first week of the quarantine in Teaneck, that said we want everyone, so we should feel connected. Everyone should, just before you start davening Kabbalat Shabbat, go out on your porches and start and sing Yedid Nefesh. And we'll all sing Yedid Nefesh together. Right? So I was saying, like, wow, that is unbelievable, because you are just presuming that you go out on your porch and everyone to your left and your right and across the street from you is going to sing Yedid Nefesh with you, and that is the bracha of Teaneck, right? You can presume that. Now, if you live in Prospect Park these days, you can presume that too. I have to the right of me at least a number of homes who might also sing Yedid Nefesh with me, but to the left of me are wonderful neighbors who, they don't know Yedid Nefesh. I will actually take a pause for a second. The mayor, as you might have heard in his call out tonight and the other night, and he actually reached out to all the clergy, has asked us to take a moment to applaud all of the workers who are giving so much of themselves and really endangering themselves these days. And it's moved to 7 o'clock, which is 4 minutes before Lichtbenchen. Okay, candlelighting is 7:04, and it's like we should actually think of it as a ritual act before we light candles this week. That we're going to go out on our doorsteps and whatever it is we're going to do, clap or say a shkayach, whatever it's going to be. That's our sense of connection to everybody around us. Okay, so back to this. We're told here is that, sure, the invitation to everyone to come into my table initially was meant to happen with my door wide open and everyone could hear me. But because reality changed, and my neighbors weren't necessarily people that belonged at my Seder. I think belonged to my Seder. So it had to, we just didn't do it anymore. So go back to what Eric said, right? So I wonder whether or not we still feel that, so first we fix the problem by making sure at least a different system to make sure that the aniyim were taken care of. You'll have a Seder. We will guarantee at Mos Chitim everyone should give, and this year I encourage you to please give generously for Mos Chitim to make sure that people will have all their Pesach needs. But they're not at our tables, so at least as like a zecher to that, as a commemoration of what it should have been, as we finished our meals, we open the door and we have some connection to the world outside, because we closed our doors now and we want to reopen them. So. I would have us, I just give us a little prompt here, right? That in this year, that we should use this time to think about those we wish we could have had at our Seders. We'll say Kol Dichvin Yetevi Yachol with this very small collection of people, or even if we are alone on Pesach night. And we know that we're not able to welcome people in, or we haven't been able to have been welcomed in by others. But when it comes time to open the door, to remember Ramat Yitziyahu Gaon's idea that the doors were open, and they were open not just for the Mashiach, but for at one point really for all the people we want to connect to, and this is a time for that yet. And let me bring us to a last point in the tefillah. In my Chumash class 2 weeks ago, we spent some time learning some midrashim about the very opening of the redemption from Mitzrayim, which happens as where does the very opening event take place? Yes, the opening event of redemption happens on Mount Sinai, right, in Har Elohim, where Moshe goes and finds God and meets God at the burning bush. That bush, I would contend, wasn't just a lure to try to get Moshe's attention, but it was actually important and essential to the message. And here, this is something I took from the Chaim Leibovitz. Here we have a series of midrashim about the symbolism of the bush. Maybe we'll just look at this last one, okay, from the Yalkut Shimoni. Anybody want to read number 5 towards the bottom of the page?
There we go.
The bottom right on the page. Just as
it is the nature of a thorn bush, that if a man thrusts his hand into it, sorry, Michael was making it larger. No, the hand suffers no hurt because its thorns are bent downwards. But when he tries to pull his hand out, the thorns catch it and he cannot withdraw it. So it is with Egypt. At the beginning, they welcomed Israel, as it stated, the land of Egypt is before you. But when they sought to leave, they would not let them, as it is stated, and also Israel I shall not let go.
Now, it's not clear at all, and the botanists contend that the sineh is not a thorn bush, but Chazal absolutely saw the sineh as a thorny bush. And it's a specific type of thorn bush that is more like one of those, Chinese hand, torture things, where you can slip your hand in quite easily, but you can't get your hand out. Or in this case, that if a person or an animal would try to get into the bush, the hand would go in easily, but if you try to get your hand out, impossible without harming yourself. It's those what they call the California backup plates. You know those for the parking lots?
Yeah.
Right. So if you drive over them, no problem. If you back up, you blow out your tires because the spokes are going to get you. So that's the sineh. Okay, that's the sineh. And in this rendering, the sineh was deeply symbolic of the reality of the Jews in Mitzrayim. They got themselves in with ease, but getting out was impossible. They felt they were trapped there, and so the sineh encapsulates the trapped nature of the Jewish people. Dennis, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just having a random thought. Is there any connection between the sneh and the bush that the ram is caught in at the Akedah?
It's referred to as a savach. It's a different word.
Okay.
And so it's a thicket, which I spoke about in Rosh Hashanah, actually. So it's a thicket versus a sneh. It is related to the word Sinai, right? Sinai is the mountain where there's a sneh, or the sneh is named after the mountain. That's one of the questions, right? Okay. So in this sense, God appears to Moshe at the sneh to say, I understand what you're experiencing. I'm fully aware. And God said, and importantly, where is the voice of God?
In the sneh.
Right? Moshe sees a flame within the sneh, which is first described as, as the malach is there, but then God's voice is present there, and God's saying to them, I am with you. And those are the words that he goes on to say directly to Moshe in the long conversation they have, but he says, I've seen what's happening, and I have come down, and I'm with you in this suffering, God says, and I've come to redeem you. And that eventually turns into some other parallel teachings of how we think about Yetziat Mitzrayim. And I'll go back and just references one last text and then this field also. But the Mishnah says, and we recite in our Haggadahs as well, B'chol Dovador, Chayab Adam L'r'ot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. In every generation, a person is obligated to see it as if he himself or she herself had left Egypt. Shne'emar, as the verse says, "V'gat levincha b'yom ha'hu limor." You should tell your child on that day, saying, "V'avorzeh asa Adonai li b'tzeiti miMitzrayim," that God did for me when I went out of Egypt. On the one hand, if any of you who are on the beautiful Zoom on Motzi Shabbos with Dahlia, who shared a piece of Torah around this and how we understand this. Part of it is that we should connect deeply to the historical past of the Jewish people, but also to recognize that I have to believe in myself, that I too experience and can experience an exodus, a Yetziah Mitzrayim. And to borrow I think it's the Zohar was the first to do so, to choose to read Mitzrayim as not just Mitzrayim, whatever the Egyptian word is based on, but rather Yetziah Mitzrayim. It is to be able to extricate ourselves from the narrow tsar, the narrow pressing reality in which we find ourselves. And there's a metaphor in that, and people's whatever peckle of tsaros they have, tsar is the same word, right? Or this year we know it's not just that; it is the actual reality of being closed in as we are, mamish closed in, and we are desperate. We are desperate to feel that we can get out of this. We're in this thorn bush, or we're in this door that's locked, and with all the horrors that are happening around us, and we feel we can't get out. We're closed in, as I write here, right? The frightened, narrow, closed in, frightening reality we are experiencing, and we have to try to find on this night the power, the redemptive power of Yetziah, that God is, first, that God is with us, and God will carry us, and that God will help us emerge from this. And that really leads me to this last piece, which is a tefillah. Let me move over to the next page so we can see it in front of it. I wrote this quickly myself, and you can. It certainly needs some editing, but Elokeinu, our God, Gibor, God who is able to override all the forces of nature. That's what the Gibor of the second bracha of the Shemona Esrei is about. Hagibor leolam, you can control all the forces of nature. You can be mechayim mesim. You can even bring people back to life who are dead. That's the power of Gibor. Rofenu, our healer. Goalenu, our redeemer. And I would have you think about these words, maybe even saying something akin to these words this Pesach, as we open the door in the midst of our Seder night. On this Pesach night, bring healing to the sick. Keep the mashchit and all ill forces away from us, from all your people, from all humanity. Grant us a Yetziah mimitzarim. Bring us forth from the narrow places, the closed in reality in which we now find ourselves. Enable us to once more welcome loved ones, friends, members of our community, neighbors, to cross our thresholds, so that we might once more share our lives, our love, our joy with one another. Enable us to walk through our portals, to join together with our community, that we might pray together once more, celebrate our joys and hug each other, support each other, be together. And may we learn never to take any of these things for granted. May Eliyahu come and bring the redemption for us, your people, and all humankind.
Amen.
Amen.
I'll share this, and if anybody wants to use it as your tefillah or craft your own, let it be something that you do. Let me make one last pitch before we conclude. First, with any questions you have, everyone, or I'll keep on going. We put out, I sent out yesterday a version of a pre-Seder Seder. And I really do hope that especially those of you who are separated from loved ones will consider doing this. I think it'd be a very powerful thing for you to be able to do. And also consider either including in that, or even if you're not going to be reaching out to other loved ones, sharing your Seder, your pre-Seder, with someone in the community who might not be fortunate to have anyone to be with. You benefit and they benefit. You benefit because you have a little bit of kol dichvin, and even with doors closed, you welcome people in, and they benefit because they won't be as alone. So if you're able to, you can see a plan to do so, send an email if you can the next day or so to the Ksharim email. If you are interested in being received into someone's Seder or to share your Seder, that'll be really beautiful for you to do. May God hear our prayers and bring us healing, protect the sick and heal them, and protect the rest of us as well. And that the next year our Seders be glorious and loud and full of all the energy that we want to share together. Okay. Everyone, we'll see you Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday night. Okay, everyone?
Okay. All right.
Okay. You know what? We're not going to hang up. I'll unmute everybody, and you just have a chance to take a few minutes just to say hello. There it is, if anybody wants to.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Miss
Hello,
you.
Leah.
Hi.
Miss you.
We could
If Dina were in charge, Dina would know how to make sure we can go from picture to picture. But
Hi, B.
it's so nice to see all your faces, and let's if you can make time. It's actually really sweet on Friday night. If you somehow can carve out the time for Kabbalat Shabbat, let's try to do that together this weekend. Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.